is Sight for Dutch.
Hello and welcome back to your Pennsylvania Dutch Minute. Today I'd like to talk to you about a topic we've never talked about, and that's a particular saint. As most of you know, the Pennsylvania Dutch are, for the most part, historically, we were a very religious group of people. However, we predominantly were Protestant, and the veneration of saints in most Protestant faiths was something that wasn't practiced. Only among a few lines, the Lutherans, for example, were one group that did do some work with saints. But I mean, a lot of your other, your old order Anabaptist groups and so forth, that was not the case. That's why it's odd that I bring you a video on a saint today, but I do because Saint Gertrude is who we're talking about today. And there's more than one Saint Gertrude, so be careful. We are talking about Saint Gertrude of Nivelles, who was born sometime in the year 1628, but died on the 17th of March, 659. So the 17th of March is her saint day. Now you're going to say right away, but March 17th is St. Patrick's Day. And it is. But for us Pennsylvania Dutch, we never would have venerated or celebrated St. Patrick. We did celebrate St. Gertrude for one reason and one reason alone. She is considered one of the saints that protects or as a patron saint of gardeners. And as you know, the Pennsylvania Dutch were agriculturalists. We lived agrarian lives. March 17th had always traditionally been a day when you could plant your onions and peas and associate it with Gertrude, I guess, because it was her feast day on the 17th of March. The last couple years, March 17th, I was not able to get out and get my peas and onions in the ground because the winter had just not allowed me to get that earthwork yet, and the ground just wasn't ready for it. But I know that there are many old school Pennsylvania Dutch that is their date, March 17th. They're getting their peas and their onions in the ground. Maybe you grew up with that tradition, and I do believe, I can't prove this, but it is her feast day, and I've often heard that it was because of St. Gertrude's Day. She would, I guess, protect those seeds, so to speak, or bless them with hopefully producing a good yield. So just real quick, a little bit about St. Gertrude. As I mentioned, she was born in the year 628 in London, which at that time was part of the Kingdom of Austrasia. One little cool side bit: when she was young, 10 years old, and if you're a fan of musical theater, you will recognize the name Pippin. Sound familiar? Pippin was brought to Gertrude's father and asked for her hand in marriage. Now, she was only 10, and this is what, according to the story that I saw, she was a very bold 10-year-old because she said, I will not marry this man. In fact, I will never marry any man. I will marry my life to God. At 10 years old, that was pretty strong words for a little girl. But her vision, I guess, came true because she never did marry. Eventually, she did become a nun, joining the monastery at Nivelles in Belgium, present-day Belgium. Here's a picture of where she eventually would not only be a nun, but would rise all the way to the title of abbess, controlling and overseeing and running the monastery there. She led a very saintly life, of course, and for her to become a saint, there are some miracles attributed to her. One was a miraculous vision that she had, where she described seeing illuminated brightness coming down from heaven, and it lasted for, according to the history, half an hour. Pretty crazy. So it gives a, quote, visitation of the true light, apparently. She also supposedly had a salvation of sailors. There was some sailors that were out in the Atlantic Sea. There was a very strong storm, and they were being attacked, quote, by sea monsters. And the sailors, some turned to their idols, while others cried out to St. Gertrude to save them. And supposedly the storm immediately subsided. The monster dove back down into the deep, and the sailors were able to continue on their journey. So that was another miracle attributed to Gertrude in works of her life. So eventually the church would canonize her in 1677 by Pope Clement XII. That was quite a long time after her actual death. She died on March 17th in the year 659, so it would be almost 1,000 years until she would receive sainthood. And as mentioned, today she is seen as a patron saint of gardeners, and also she is considered a saint towards mental illness and cats as well. So I think that's a kind of a funny trio there. But so it is. So if you've ever wondered why March 17th was the day that your grandparents were out in the garden already planting their peas or onion sets, we can contribute it to Saint Gertrude and her feast day. So it was a little bit of a different video, but give you a little bit of insight into our culture and one practice that we, and there are, like I said, there are still some Pennsylvania Dutch that hold true to this, or at least try to, weather permitting, let's say that. So on March 17th, sure, spend half the day celebrating St. Patrick, have a couple pints of Guinness maybe, eat some corned beef and cabbage or whatever, but then also spend some of your day out there in the garden planting those pea sets and onion sets. You can celebrate both saints. What the heck, why not? Hey, if you have an idea for a future video, email me. Email address is there at the end. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, well, you gotta do that so you get an update every time a new video or new material is put out. Also, feel free to visit my website, PA Dutch 101, where you'll find tons and tons of stuff. A blog that I keep that's all in Pennsylvania Dutch. So if you're at the ability where you can read Pennsylvania Dutch, you can check all those posts. There's 10 years worth of entries there, and links to helpful websites and other groups that you can connect with other Pennsylvania Dutch people. Until next time, keep those questions coming. I'll gladly keep the videos coming as well. Remember, March 17th, get out there and plant your onions and your peas. But until next time, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch, and Max gut.
Magst du gut?